Hello and welcome to Mastering Adam, Becoming the Best Adam for Your Eve. My name is Casper Stockham. I'm your host today, and I have my co-host Chris Harris on the line as well. We're going to get to Chris in just a second. Hey, I want to welcome you guys to the show. Our sponsors to the podcast are I Am Love Builders, Divorce Proofing Your Marriage. Our book is out, and it has been doing quite well on Amazon. In fact, we hit the where is it there? We hit the hot new release list on Amazon. We were number 95 for a minute, and we even hit the number one hot new release list as well. So please go to our website. You can check out more information on that book at IamLoveBuilders.com. You can check us out on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We're all over the place at I Am Love Builders. All right. So we're going to get right into it today. I want to introduce my guest host today, Christopher Harris. He's executive director of Unhyphenated America. And Chris, I have to confess that since we met a couple years ago at the Trump Hotel, I had been using Unhyphenated America because I was running for Congress a while back, and I was saying during my stump speech that I'm former military. I'm a 100% unhyphenated American, and every time I would say that, the room just erupted in celebration, right? So we can probably get into that a little bit, but we want to keep this away from politics and more on Adam and Eve and stuff. But I appreciated meeting you and your lovely wife there at the Trump Hotel, and Lonnie Poindexter was with us.
Yes.
In fact, I'm going to have him on the show here in a few weeks, so I'm excited about that as well. But Chris, can you introduce yourself to my audience and kind of tell us a little bit about Christopher Harris?
Well, thanks for having me, Casper, and hello to all your audience. Yes, I'm Christopher Harris, and by profession, I'm the executive director of Unhyphenated America, and we just simply believe that America is best when it's unhyphenated. We all believe that we were created in the image of God and that there is no color. Now, your nationality is something you get to choose, right? But you're either an American or you're nothing else, because America is an idea.
Yeah.
So there's people who are all over the world right now who are just hoping to get to America because they embrace the ideas of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And those beliefs are really based on a biblical idea. And that's kind of the topic of what we're talking about. One of the things I think is causing a problem in America today is that we've departed from those biblical ideas that are foundational to America.
Yeah. Amen. All right, so we're going to get right into it today. Our core topic or discussion is around nurturing, trust, and intimacy. I think Adam and Eve failed miserably in this. Adam mainly because it started out, from my perspective, he started out blaming Eve like right off the bat, because God was looking for Adam, and he said, "Hey, where are you?" And we were naked, so we were hiding or whatever. And he said, "Who told you that?" And it just went downhill from there. He said, "Hey, that woman that you made for me, she's the one, right?" So what are your thoughts on that, Chris?
I could go on and on about this. Actually, one of my worldview and my general thought processes is about beginning with the foundation, understanding the beginning. And I love the Bible. And I'm not a theologian, right? I'm not necessarily a Bible scholar, but I am someone who loves to study the Bible because I believe it gives you the answers to everything, because human beings and human nature has not changed. So if you go back and study the book of Genesis, and specifically Genesis chapters 1, 2, and 3, the more you deep dive into that, the more you have an understanding of why the world is the way it is right now. And I take a lot of the young men that I mentor through Genesis 1, 2, and 3.
All right.
So now I tend to, I don't want to split hairs. I tend to use the New King James Version Bible only because it uses more modern language. But the King James is the standard.
Yeah.
But just from a modern language standpoint, I prefer the NKJV.
Sure.
But that being said, let's go back to Genesis 2, right? Which one of the things I've had to explain to someone is that Genesis 1 was a high level overview.
Right.
It's like, okay, he did this for chapter, in day one, day two, so on and so forth. And then he created them, man and woman, male and female, right? He created them. And forgive me, Jasper, I had a conversation, debate, if you will, with a Facebook friend. And she was under the impression that man and woman were created at the exact same time.
Right. And they weren't.
And they were not. And I was basically saying that I was like, well, the Bible makes it clear that it was not. She said, well, in Genesis 1, of course, it says he created them male and female.
Right.
No, that was a high level overview
Right.
of what happened. Genesis 2 gives the specifics of how he created the man and how he created the woman and how he created the woman from the man for the purpose of being a helpmeet to the man.
Right.
But he gave the man commands. He told the man, of every tree, the fruit of every tree in the garden, you can eat, except that one.
Exactly.
Right? Except that one.
Yeah.
You can eat everything. And I look at it and I think about my sons and what I teach them, or what I'm teaching them as they grow. They're toddlers, 4 and 1 year old, right? But what I'm going to teach them about what it is to be a man, and you have to have a response. You start with responsibilities. Men are happiest when we have a job, when we have a task.
We're working.
Absolutely. We have to work. God put us in the garden to work. He gave us a purpose. He gave us a mission. And that relationship between a man and God is first, right? And then he gave us the woman to be a helpmeet to us. So if you are keeping things in proper vertical alignment, then you don't look to your wife for advice on what to do. You look to God because he put that responsibility on you. He said, I'm making that connection with you. You are the head of the household, or as I said, just as Christ is the head of the church. And so the mistake that Adam made, first of all, and I'll put things in a almost secular term, it's just like, you just imagine some dude walking up and talking to your wife, start spitting game at your wife, right? You'd be like, dude,
excuse me, step back.
You need to roll up out of here, partner, right? It's just not something that's acceptable. Like, how would you allow another man to roll up on your wife and start spitting game to her? No, you're not going to allow that. So that was mistake number 1 by Al, right?
Right. And I talked about this. No, you're good. I talked about this on the last show because that conversation that Satan had with Eve was not a end conversation. There had to be something before that, because you just don't walk up on somebody and say, now God really didn't say, right? I mean, there had to be a conversation before that, that led up to that conversation. So it's not like I don't walk up to you and say, now, did your wife really say such and such? No, because if I did that, we would have had a conversation before that to where she was, where I said, or I thought she was saying, we were talking about it before. So, and the Bible's not clear on that, but I'm, that's not a conversation you just roll up on somebody and just and start talking like that.
Well, I mean, and especially when you sit there and think about like the movies and books that have been written and performed about the Bible, right? They have to take a certain amount of license, right? Because there's more detail, right? It's just not like, like you said, all of a sudden it's like, Adam and Eve were just sitting there chilling, and all of a sudden Satan, the serpent, just pops out of nowhere. Hey, Eve, did God really say? It's like, well, no, there's something that led up to that,
right?
But it's written in a way to make you understand. It's like, hey, listen, I'm not going to give you every single detail about how this happened. Just like when people say, well, the Bible didn't say. Well, does it have to say everything? And are you needing specifics on, like, does it have to be a Betty Crocker cookbook? You know what I mean? It's just like,
Right.
turn the oven up to 350. It's like, does it have to say everything? No. So something led up to that. So Adam's fault was failing to check Satan step into his wife.
Right.
Second mistake, I believe, was failing to tell his wife, "Hey, what are you doing?
Right.
You shouldn't be. No, you're not talking to him. That's unacceptable." The third, and it depends upon which translation you read, but it's funny. As many times as I read Genesis 3, and this is the reason why you have to continually read. Right? It's not that the Bible changes; it's
Right.
still there, right. The words are still there, but you can't see it right now.
You get a new revelation.
You get a new revelation. And somebody mentioned this. I went back and looked and said, doggone it, I didn't even notice that, as it said, and she took and gave to Adam who was with her.
Right.
So you sit there and go, wait a minute, because it changed everything. It's like, wait a minute. So Adam, bro, you were standing right there. Now once again, I've had conversations with people, debates, if you will, about like, where was Adam? Because some people want to believe that Adam was like off chilling on the other side of the garden. He was
working or doing something,
but
doing what he's supposed to be doing. Yeah.
He was with her because it said, and she took and gave to Adam who was with her.
Yeah, she didn't go find him and give it to him. She took it and handed it to him.
So that tells you he was not doing what he was supposed to do, right? But then, okay, so that's mistake, number 3, right? But then, okay, that's number 3. That's 2. Number 3. Yeah. But then the problem is that when she gave it to him, I think that had he not eaten, because what does the word say that Eve fell into transgression? Isn't that what Paul says? Eve was deceived. She fell into transgression, but sin did not enter the world until Adam ate.
Exactly.
So that kind of speaks to our role as men, is that no matter what our wife does, ultimately everything falls upon us to take that responsibility. But the biggest fault, after he did eat of the fruit, right, and then their eyes were open and they realized they were naked, as you pointed out. I just think it's funny because just the way my mind works. I sit there and I think about, like, all of a sudden you look like, oh my gosh, I'm naked,
right?
And you try to hide yourself. And what are you trying to hide yourself with? A leaf, which is not sufficient to cover your sin, right? Which is a whole nother thing, because most people don't even stop to think about the first death that occurred in the Bible was when God sacrificed an animal. It doesn't say what animal it was, but we can assume that it was a lamb, right? Because why else would he sacrifice anything other than a lamb? Anyway, but he sacrificed some animal to give them skin to cover them. But anyway, going back to when God was saying, yo, Adam, where are you? Right?
Right.
And for all of us who are mere human beings who fall into sin or whatever like that, we realize you can try to run away from God. But when he asks, with my sons, I have camera system in my house, right? So I can see when they're doing things. And I'm asking my son, what are you doing? And he's like, nothing. It's like, I know what you're doing, dude. I see you this whole time, right? I just want to see what you're going to say.
Yeah.
So for him to say, I'm hiding because I was naked. Who told you were naked?
Exactly.
I ate of the fruit that you told me not to eat, and I realized I was naked, right? But what did he do? The biggest sin, well, I shouldn't say the biggest sin, but the big mistake, and I believe that had he owned up and said, you know what, you're right, God, you told me not to do it, and I screwed up. I got stuck on stupid. I was listening to somebody other than you, and I decided to go ahead and disobey. But when he said it was the woman you gave me, right? And think about this, Casper. I think it's one of the problems that we see in America today is that more men need to man up. Does that mean that women should not be held accountable? Of course they should be held accountable, because God held them accountable. That's why he sat there and said, okay, he asked he said to the snake first, he said to the woman, hey, because of what you did, here's what your suffering is going to be. Right. Then he said to the snake, because of what you did, here's what your suffering is going to be. But now, Adam, me and you, we got to talk, right? It's like, this is on you now. You're going to earn your living from the sweat of your brow for the rest of your life.
And imagine before this, he was working and it wasn't there was no sweat, right?
Yeah.
He was just doing stuff. He was planting stuff, and all of a sudden, it just started growing up. He was
Hmm.
talking, naming the animals and stuff, but the animals had to come to him for him to name them. So he's in communication with I mean, things are just running very, very smoothly
Yeah.
up until that time. Um, Before I forget, if you're watching this live on Facebook, you can comment in the comment section if you have a question for myself or for Chris. And I'm monitoring the Facebook group. I'm not monitoring the other ones right now, but we're monitoring Facebook. So if you have any questions or comments, feel free to type them in the chat on the Facebook Live group. Yeah. So, man, this is great. I appreciate you chiming in on this. And obviously, you have a lot to say about it. So that's awesome.
Oh, it's deep. I mean, Casper, because once again, you have a better understanding. I mean, everything, when you understand Genesis 1, 2, and 3, then you understand everything else. You
Yeah.
understand that our sins were so grievous that only a blood sacrifice would do. So an innocent creature,
Right.
probably a lamb,
Right.
right, was sacrificed for our sins, for
Yeah.
our transgressions, right?
Yeah.
And everything after that was God orchestrating things so that we could be reconciled with Him. But we had to be thrown out of the garden, right?
Yeah.
And I point to, like, for example, I don't understand, and I guess this makes me the president and chairman of the board, chairman emeritus of the He-Man Woman Haters Club, but I think it's Genesis 3:16. I was kind of pointing out, I'm like, you do understand that the reason why you have pain in childbirth is because of Eve.
Right.
Because if you look at every other animal out there, I mean, other than if there's some sort of complication, other animals, mammals, if you want to refer to us as human animals, right?
Yeah.
But every other creature, female creature, does not have pain in childbirth. They're just going through the gestation period, and then they go into quote unquote labor, and she
Yeah.
sits down for a second, and out pops
Yeah.
the baby, right?
Yeah.
And she gets up
It
and
def-
keeps it moving.
Yeah. It definitely doesn't look like they're in pain because a lot of
Yeah.
times they're walking. It's just
Yeah.
doing their. Yeah. Exactly. It doesn't look like they're in pain at all. You're right. I
Well,
never even thought about that. Yeah.
well, but then the second part of the punishment for her transgression was that, you know, that he will basically, that you're going to desire his position, but he shall be the head over you, right?
Yeah.
If I had the exact Bible in front of me, I could give you the exact words, but I'm paraphrasing. And the interesting thing, once again, something that was revealed, a revelation happens. I went back and I looked at Genesis chapter 4, right? And here we go to Cain and Abel. And when God told Cain, "Yo, fix your face, dude," right?
Right.
Think about it. He was like, "Hey, if you don't fix your face, if you don't fix your consonants, right,
Right.
then sin is waiting at your door, and it shall rule over you."
Yes.
And I was like, and then the reason I bring that up, Casper, is because some people were saying they didn't want to believe that this was saying that you desire that Genesis 3 was saying you desire to rule over your husband,
Mhm.
but as a punishment, he shall rule over you. Well, that exact same language was used in Genesis chapter 4 when
Right.
God was talking to Cain, and he was
Right.
saying is that if you don't fix your face, the desire for sin and evil will rule over you.
Yes.
So this is how you know the Bible's consistent in that way. But for men, it's really, really simple. You have to get in proper vertical alignment with God,
Alignment. Yeah.
right?
I talk about that alignment. In fact, I have an image that we've shown on the show before. It kind of speaks to what you're saying, I believe.
Exactly.
So we have this alignment, this biblical alignment: God, Christ, husband, wife, children, and the world complains about this because
Oh, yeah.
the world says the wife and the husband are equal. Man and woman are equal. In fact, women are just as good or even better than most men anyway. The whole
Mhm.
deal, right? And they have our children pitted against us as well, right? They're telling the
Mhm.
children in school that, look, you don't have to listen to your parents. They're not that smart anyway. You're smarter than they are. They can't do the math problems that you can do. So I mean, they're just filling the kid's head with all these different things. And then what I've done is just shown a inverted picture because not
Hmm.
because God and Christ are our foundation,
Exactly.
right? And from that foundation, we have the husband, who is the foundation for the family, and the
Hmm.
wife is the foundation, along with the husband, for the children. So it just helps kind of put that into perspective, I think.
Well, and I like that idea. Of course, the only problem is people interpret that to say that, oh well, children are at the top, they're superior.
Or
But
top, yeah, yeah,
but that's, once again, that's misinterpreting what it's saying. Like I said, you have to have a strong foundation.
yeah.
I count myself as very blessed and fortunate, Casper. I mean, you had a chance to meet my wonderful wife, and we've been married for many years now, and I'm blessed to have parents. My parents have been married for 54 plus years. So
Wow.
I had that foundation in seeing them. And my father is a man. My father is the man. He is the head of the household. My entire life, all I've ever seen is
Yeah,
my father being the head of the household.
yeah,
And so when I was dating, one of the things I would make it be known was like, listen, I was raised to be a man. I was raised to be the man. And if
right.
there's ever going to be any sort of doubts, conflicts, or whatever like that about that structure, I'm not the man for you. Like
Right,
I'm not gonna. We're not gonna have this argument. You should.
right.
It's like, just move on. It's best that we move on. And so,
Yeah,
one of the things I feel very blessed about, but then it's a blessing. I'm not taking a blessing for granted, but one of the things I feel very blessed about is the marriage that I have is because we had those conversations up front. It's like it's amazing to me when people they get married and they say, "I didn't know this about you."
right.
Well, you're supposed to, during the courting phase, you're supposed to have that conversation. You're supposed to be finding out, are we in alignment? Is
Right.
your worldview aligned with mine? So you can't go around bashing the wife you married or the husband you married because you failed to ask these questions. You failed to do your due diligence
You
to
should,
find out, hey,
yeah, yeah.
oh,
You should be getting to know your spouse before they're your spouse. You should be getting to know them, like you said, during the courting phase or during the engagement phase. You should be asking all kinds of questions. You should be around them often enough to know what their character is, how they respond to different situations, everything, so that by the time you say "I do," it's there's no more mystery left with that person. Totally agree.
because I had been preparing myself for marriage. I was prepared to be a man, to be the man, to be a husband uh,
Yeah,
by my parents, by the example I saw. There's a lot of things that are actively taught. There's a lot of things that are supposed to be actively taught, I should say that. But there's even more things that are passively caught. And one of the problems in America today, and I guess more specifically among people who share our melanin content, they're just missing the bulk of things that are supposed to be passively caught because they're not seeing it.
yeah,
The family's not there for them to see it.
right.
And like when I was dating, I started noticing that among a lot of women. It's like, oh yeah, she's beautiful, yeah, she's smart, so on and so forth. But then you start having these conversations and realize she never caught how she's supposed to be. There was never any talk of, let alone mention, modeling of what it is to be a Proverbs 31 woman.
Yeah,
And, and so, even if you are a quote unquote good man, and I know people can talk about this story of Hosea and everything like that, but I'm saying is that even if you're a good man, you're going to have headaches and heartaches if you choose to marry a woman who doesn't understand her role, who doesn't understand Genesis 2 when it says you were created to be a helpmeet.
yeah.
You'll end up like oh gosh, is Ahab and Jezebel, right? You'll end
Mhm.
up being a weak man who'll be
Yeah,
manipulated by a woman. And I'm not saying this to degrade or denigrate women in any way, shape, or form, but at the end of the day, women can be very influential and can
sure.
easily manipulate a man because of their feelings.
One of the reasons why I started this podcast series, Chris, is because men have been demasculated, I think is the term now. So
Mhm.
women, because they are excellent helpers, or they have basically filled the gap, if you will, and now they have risen to the point that they're in charge. And 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 that's, I'm not saying that women can't run things. What I'm saying is that uh, there is a proper alignment, and the reason why the world is the way it is because men have not filled the role, right? So women are kind of swooped in, but men need to have a plan. You need to have, you know, it's hard for a woman to help you if there's nothing to help you with. In other words, you're sitting on the couch, so she's like, well, you know, these bills need to be paid, so I'm going to go out and work. And next thing you know, she's making all the money, and you're sitting on the couch complaining, drinking whatever you're doing, but you're not fulfilling your role as the head of the family. And it doesn't mean you have to be making the most money, but it does mean you need to have a plan. What is the plan? Because she wants to come alongside and help you with the plan. But if you don't know what the plan is, then she doesn't know what the plan is. So she makes up her own plan. And then you have a lot of chaos going on. So,
Absolutely.
yeah. So the purpose of this podcast, you know, obviously, we're not going to change the world with this one podcast, but I'm just trying to get that out in the atmosphere that there are some things that we can do as men, have a plan, ask and show our wives the plan and have her come alongside of us and help us in this endeavor to get things back on track.
Well, and I would, once again, I would say start with knowing who you are, right?
Right.
Knowing that Adam was created whole and complete. I mean, it's such a misinterpretation to say, well, like for example, Adam was lonely. No, Adam was alone. He was not lonely.
No,
Adam had a job.
he was busy working and stuff,
Yeah,
and he didn't even know he needed a helpmate until God told him.
exactly. God, it wasn't. You know, there was never a point where Adam was like, "Hey, yo, God, excuse me, Father, I'm a little lonely. Can you help a brother out?" None of that happened.
No.
And we know as men, we can get very caught up in our work. As a matter of fact, we can forget to eat because,
Right.
especially if we're working on something that we're passionate about,
Exactly.
you sit there and say, "Man, whew, I just realized I'm hungry. I haven't
Right.
eaten all day," because you've been working on something you're passionate about. Adam was given the first job to tend and keep the garden, right? It had never rained on earth until the great flood, right?
Mhm.
Because the mist came up from the ground to water everything, but there was no man to tend and keep the garden. That's why God
Right.
created man and put him in a garden. So Adam was tending and keeping the garden.
Right.
He was not breaking a sweat doing it,
Right.
right? That's the interesting thing.
Yeah.
The garden was kind of self-sustaining. It just needed a little bit of pruning. That's the
Right.
difference between pruning versus being a farmer and
Yeah.
tilling the soil. He didn't have to
Yeah.
do all that. But then, secondly, is that God gave him the job of being besides being a horticulturist, he was, what's the word I'm looking for? Gosh, when you're dealing with animals, it's not veterinarian, but I'm having a
Yeah.
brain fart moment, excuse me. But basically, remember, he brought all the animals to him and said, "Adam, you have the responsibility to name them." Just
Yeah.
like he had the responsibility after he put Adam to sleep, and whether it was a literal rib or figurative, we know now with
Yeah.
science, right? It's the DNA. That could just be a way of saying he took DNA from Adam, and since
Right.
Adam had an XY chromosome, he could give an X chromosome, and so Eve was created, and she's XX chromosome. So we know now that the Bible proves that science has proven the Bible to be correct. There's
Yeah.
no way that woman was created first because she only has XX chromosomes. She doesn't have the Y to give. Therefore, woman had to come from man. She was created to be a helpmeet for man, but man has to be working. He has to be on his grind. He has to know about it, have his relationship with God correct,
Yeah.
and then be leading, be busy. There's 168 hours in a week. Dude, if you're only working 40 hours a week, what you doing with the rest of your time, man?
Right. Right.
I mean, if you work 40 hours a week and you sleep 7 hours, 8 hours a day, right? That's 56 hours, and the 40 hours of work is 96 hours. I mean, you're left with 72 hours a week, bruh. What are you doing with the other 72 hours a week? So you're telling me you're behind on your bills, but you're only working 40 hours. You're
Okay.
not taking care of business. You're not doing what you're supposed to be doing.
Work
And
6
you don't
days,
even
rest one day. Yeah.
that you don't even feel good about yourself because you're not leading. Doesn't mean, like, as Casper just as you just said, you don't have to be out there making the most money. You don't have to be making a multiple six-figure income. You don't have to make six figures. But bro, you need to be working. You need to be leading. You feel better about yourself when you're working. And honestly, that's one of the punishments, the curses. But what men have learned to do is to say, you know what? I'm more of a man when I work.
Right.
You feel good actually when you have broke a sweat, and at the end of a long day, you're like, you know what? I put in work today.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
your wife respects you if you put in that work. She sees you breaking a sweat and you're bringing the fruits of your labor home to your family. And
Yeah.
then you're sitting down and you're fulfilling your role as the spiritual head of your family, sitting down and reading the Bible with your family, leading your family in prayer. That's when
Amen.
you are doing well. And that more likely helps to build that trust and intimacy within your marriage because your
Amen.
wife knows that you're out front leading you. She knows that you know your role. It's like being on a cruise ship, and if you walk up to the captain and you're like, "Hey, captain, what are we doing today? Where are we going?" He's like, "I don't really know. I mean, I'm just gonna go up there, and I figure we'll just let it ride." It's like, no,
We
I'm
just,
getting off this ship.
yeah. We're gonna go that way. It's
Yeah,
like, no, brother,
yeah.
let me off this ship. Hey, Chris, we are like way out of time, but
Oh goodness, yeah, sorry about
I'm
that.
gonna have to have you back. I'm gonna have to have you back for part two on this. I appreciate you coming on the show. We had a couple questions, but they were from a previous show I was going to ask you, but we don't have time for that. I will have you back. I'm booked up for the
Yeah.
next couple of weeks, but I'd love to reschedule back in so
Oh
we
yeah.
can continue this, man. It's been a blessing. Uh, Folks, you can take our free 5-minute love assessment. You can go to iamlovebuilders.com. It's going to help you become a MVP when it comes to your relationships. That's the most valuable partner. It's a new program that we're launching. We're going to have a live, interactive, monthly Zoom call that we do with folks. So you can get more information on that by going to iamlovebuilders.com. And remember, if you are not having fun, you are not doing it right. We will see you on the next show. Talk to you. Bye bye.